The 1960s. It was a time of seismic social change, of revolution, of vibrant color. But in the shadows of California's golden hills, a different kind of revolution was brewing, a revolution of terror. It wasn't waged with protests, but with pistols and knives. It wasn't announced with music, but with ciphers and mocking letters sent to press. This is the story of a killer who did more than take lives. He created a brand. He directed a performance. He played a game with an entire nation as his unwilling audience. He gave himself a name, and over 50 years later, we are still speaking it. Welcome to PsycheLens Narratives. Today, we are not just recounting a series of cold cases. We are dissecting a legacy. We will explore the murders, the letters, and the madness. But more importantly, we will put the mind of the perpetrator under our lens. We will go beyond the what and where and attempt to decipher the why. This is the anatomy of a ghost, the psychological autopsy of the man who called himself the Zodiac. Part 1. The End of Innocence. Our story begins not with a bang, but with a quiet, heartbreaking stillness. December 20th, 1968. The small, industrial town of Berryessa, just north of San Francisco. Christmas lights were twinkling. High school students David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen were on their very first date. It was a night of simple, teenage innocence. They parked on Lake Herman Road, a dark, unlit stretch known locally as a lover's lane. The details of what happened next are chillingly sterile, almost clinical. Another car pulled up. A man emerged. David Faraday was shot once in the head, execution style, beside the car. Betty Lou Jensen tried to run. She was shot 5 times in the back. The Berryessa police were baffled. There was no robbery, no apparent motive. It was an act of pure, brutal, senseless violence. For 6 agonizing months, the case went cold, a tragic footnote in a year of unrest. California remained unaware that this was not an ending, but a prologue. Part 2. The birth of the brand. The shadow emerged again 7 months later. July 4th, 1969. Independence Day. In the nearby town of Vallejo, 22-year-old Darlene Ferrin and 19-year-old Michael Mageau parked at Blue Rock Springs, another local lover's lane. Just after midnight, a car pulled into the lot behind them, its lights off. It then sped away. It was a strange, unsettling moment, but the car returned. It parked beside them. The driver exited, walking towards them with a bright, blinding flashlight. Mageau, believing it to be a police officer, reached for his identification. Without a single word, the man opened fire with a 9mm Luger. He methodically shot both victims, returned to his car, and then, hearing Mageau groan in pain, came back to shoot them both again. Darlene Ferrin was pronounced dead on arrival. Michael Mageau, despite being shot in the face, neck, and chest, survived. He gave a description, a white male, heavy-set, stocky. But this killer was different. He wasn't content to remain a shadow. He craved the spotlight. Less than an hour after the shooting, the phone rang at the Vallejo Police Department. The operator, Nancy Slover, picked up. A man's voice, calm, monotone, and deliberate, spoke. It was a voice she would never forget. He said, "I wish to report murder. If you will go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway to the public park, you will find the kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger." Then he delivered the line that separated him from every killer before him. He took credit. "I also killed those kids last year." A cold pause and then a haunting, soft goodbye. The performance had begun, and the performer was about to give himself a name. On August 1st, 1969, 3 identical handwritten letters arrived at the offices of the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Vallejo Times-Herald. The author provided details from both crime scenes that only the killer could know. He described the ammunition, the positions of the bodies, the brands of the weapons. And then he introduced his signature, a circle with a cross drawn through it, a gun sight, a symbol that would become synonymous with fear. But the letters contained more than a confession. They contained a threat and a game. Each letter included 1/3 of a 408-character cipher. The author demanded the papers print the cipher on their front page, or he would go on a kill rampage and kill a dozen people over the weekend. The media, caught between ethics and fear, complied. The cipher was published. 1 week later, a high school history teacher from Salinas, Donald Hardin, and his wife Betty cracked the code. The message inside was not a confession. It was a manifesto. It was the first terrifying look into the mind of the killer. It read, "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all. To kill something gives me the most thrilling experience. It is even better than getting your rocks off with a girl. The best part of it is that when I die, I will be reborn in paradise, and all the people I have killed will become my slaves. I will not give you my name, because you will try to slow down or stop my collecting of slaves for my afterlife." He was no longer just a killer. He was an ideologue, a game master. And in his next letter, he finally gave himself his official title. This is the Zodiac speaking. Part 3. The Theater of Terror. The Zodiac was now a media celebrity, and he was reveling in it. His next act would be his most bizarre, his most theatrical, and his most sadistic. September 27th, 1969. The serene, sun-drenched shores of Lake Berryessa. College students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were picnicking on a secluded peninsula. Their peaceful afternoon was interrupted by a man emerging from the trees. This was no hurried attack in the dark. This was a daylight performance. The man was wearing an elaborate, terrifying costume. A black, executioner style had covered his entire head, with dark glasses sewn into the eye holes. Draped over his chest was a bib-like garment, adorned with his now famous circle cross symbol. In one hand, he held a large bayonet-style knife. In the other, a pistol. His voice was calm. He told them he was an escaped convict, that he had killed a guard, and that he needed their car and money to go to Mexico. Brian, trying to de-escalate, offered them the keys and their cash. But the Zodiac wasn't there for money. He was there for the experience. He ordered Cecilia to tie Brian up with pre-cut lengths of plastic clothesline. He then tied Cecilia. He talked to them. He was, by Brian's later account, almost conversational, before his tone suddenly turned cold. "I'm going to have to stab you people," he said. He stabbed Brian Hartnell 6 times in the back. He then turned to Cecilia Shepard and stabbed her 10 times. She would die from her wounds 2 days later. The Zodiac was not done with his performance. He walked calmly back to Brian's car. He took a black marker and drew his symbol on the car door. Beneath it, he wrote the dates of his attacks. Vallejo, December 20th, 68, July 4th, 69, September 27th, 69, 6:30. By knife, he had created a living witness and a public scorecard. He was bragging. Part 4. The Urban Nightmare. 2 weeks later, the Zodiac escalated his game from the isolated lovers' lanes to the heart of the city. October 11th, 1969. San Francisco. Taxi driver Paul Stein picked up a passenger. The destination, the affluent neighborhood of Presidio Heights. At the intersection of Washington and Cherry, the passenger shot Stein once in the head, killing him instantly. This, however, was where the Zodiac's legendary luck kicked in. Across the street, 3 teenagers saw the attack from a window. They called the police. They reported a white male adult attacking the cab driver. The police dispatcher in a catastrophic error, broadcast the alert for a black male adult. Minutes later, two officers responding to the call, Donald Falk and Eric Zelms, passed a white man walking calmly away from the crime scene, just blocks away. They stopped him, asked if he had seen anything. The man, who perfectly matched the correct description, gestured vaguely and said he'd seen someone running. The officers, looking for a black suspect, let him go and drove on. The man they spoke to was almost certainly the Zodiac. He had looked the law in the face, and the law had looked right past him. The Zodiac went home, and he wrote a letter. Days later, a letter arrived at the San Francisco Chronicle. It contained a new chilling trophy, a piece of Paul Stein's blood-soaked shirt. This was irrefutable proof. The letter itself was a masterpiece of taunting. He described the police's failure. "Pigs, all screwed up. The police shall never catch me, because I have been too clever for them. I'm the one that did the proving." But it was the postscript that plunged the city into a new level of terror. He threatened to attack a school bus. He wrote, "School children are nice targets. I think I shall pick off the little kiddies as they come bouncing out." The city erupted in panic. Police escorts were assigned to school buses. Helicopters hovered. Parents drove their children to school. The Zodiac, with a single stamp, had accomplished what no bomb threat could. He held an entire city hostage. This was, perhaps, his ultimate goal. He sent more letters, more ciphers, including the still unsolved 340 cipher. He called into a TV talk show, speaking with lawyer Melvin Belly. He claimed more victims, though none could be confirmed. And then he slowly faded. The letters became less frequent, then stopped. The Zodiac, as a physical killer, simply vanished. Part 5. PsycheLens, the anatomy of a ghost. We have the timeline. We have the evidence. But the murders, the ciphers, the costume, these are not the real story. They are symptoms. They are the outward expressions of a deeply fractured and malignant psyche. To understand the Zodiac, we must look through the psyche lens. We must deconstruct the man to understand the monster. Insight 1. Malignant narcissism. The black hole of ego. The Zodiac was not just a narcissist. He was a textbook example of malignant narcissism. This is a psychological syndrome, not a simple personality trait. It's a toxic combination of 4 elements. Narcissism, a pathological grandiosity. He didn't just think he was smart. He believed he was a superior being. The ciphers were his proof. The letters were his demand for adulation. Antisocial behavior, a complete disregard for rules, laws, and the lives of others. People were not people. They were slaves for his afterlife. They were objects. Sadism. He took genuine pleasure from the suffering of others, not just the physical pain, but the psychological pain. The costume at Lake Berryessa, the phone call to the police, the school bus threat, these were all acts of profound psychological sadism. He fed on the city's fear. Paranoia. He saw the police as pigs, as bumbling blue meanies. He was a victim, the misunderstood genius, in his own story. The Zodiac was a black hole of ego. He demanded the entire world's attention to feel a flicker of existence. The murders were not the goal. They were the currency he used to buy the fame he so desperately craved. Insight 2. The performance of control. A nobody playing God FBI profilers, like Robert Graysmith, who wrote the definitive book on the case, have long theorized that the Zodiac was a nobody in his real life. A man of low status, perhaps a failed academic, military, or social figure. A man ignored by women, disrespected by colleagues, invisible to the world. This invisibility is key. The Zodiac persona was a compensation mechanism. It was the ultimate twisted form of faking it till you make it. In his real life, he was impotent, But as the Zodiac, he was all-powerful. He was a director, writer, and star of his own horror film, and he forced the entire Bay Area to be a supporting cast. The costume, the letters, the rules of his game. This was all about control. He couldn't control his own life, so he decided to control the lives and deaths of others and the emotions of millions. He was not just committing murder. He was committing terrorism. He used violence to create a psychological effect, proving his existence to a world that had ignored him. Insight 3. The intellectual game, the arrogance of the amateur Zodiac, needed to be seen as intelligent. The ciphers are the greatest proof of this. They weren't just a way to hide his name. They were a way to prove his superiority. He taunted the police's intelligence at every turn. But here's the twist. The ciphers themselves are, by cryptographic standards, amateurish. The 408 cipher was solved by a high school teacher. The others remain unsolved, possibly because they're flawed or simply contain no information at all. This suggests a man with high arrogance, but perhaps only average intelligence. He was a jack of all trades in his own dark world. Part-time killer, part-time cryptographer, part-time costume designer, but master of none. His true genius was not in the ciphers, but in media manipulation. He understood, long before the 24-hour news cycle, that fear is the most valuable commodity. Insight 4. The suspects in the DNA for decades. One name has dominated the Zodiac conversation: Arthur Lee Allen. The circumstantial evidence is overwhelming. He lived in Vallejo, was fired from his job as a teacher, and was interviewed by police just days after the Lake Berryessa attack. He wore a Zodiac brand watch. He told friends his favorite book was The Most Dangerous Game, the same inspiration the Zodiac claimed. A survivor, Michael Mageau, even identified him years later. But forensics is a language of science, and it does not speak Allen's name. Handwriting analysis was inconclusive. Fingerprints did not match. And in 2002, a DNA test on saliva from the Zodiac's envelope stamps did not match Arthur Lee Allen. So, the ghost remains. Conclusion: the unkillable idea. The Zodiac case is more than a whodunit. It is a story about the failure of systems, the chilling power of the media, and the terrifying fragility of a human mind. Who was the Zodiac? Was he Arthur Lee Allen, a man who played games with police until his death? Was he another suspect? Or was he, as some believe, a committee of different people? Perhaps we are asking the wrong question. The PsycheLens shows us that the identity of the man is less important than the legacy of the monster. The Zodiac's final, greatest victory was not that he was never caught. It's that he created a puzzle so profound, so terrifyingly open-ended, that we are all still players in his game more than half a century later. He didn't just kill 4 men and 3 women. He created an idea, a character, a modern myth. And myths, unlike people, are immortal. Thank you for watching. What do you believe was the Zodiac's true psychological driver? Was it a lust for fame, a compensation for failure, or something else entirely? Share your theories in the comments. Join us next time as we put another mind under the lens.